Alright guys, we are back. Good evening, good morning, or good afternoon. As always, it is so great to see you. And friends, welcome to, well, we're going to talk about the new MacBooks here. Now, as you may know, Apple unveiled the new M1 Pro and M1 Max Macbook Pros earlier this week, and I have to say, these things look pretty awesome. Now, I already have mine on order, but if you're on the fence about which configuration to get, let me help you out. Now, in today's video, we're going to touch base on a variety of topics in this buyer's guide that will help you make sense of some of the options and features that are available and which one you should prioritize, or how you should prioritize these rather. But before we dive into all that, if you can do me a big favor. You see, we put these videos together to help you make educated buying decisions or keep you informed as far as what's happening in the industry. If we're helpful, do me a favor, hit that like button down below. It really does help with the whole YouTube algorithm. That said, my friend, pull up a seat in. Let's go. Okay folks, if you checked out the new MacBook Pro options on Apple's website, there's no doubt you notice there's a lot of configuration options. There's different core counts for the CPUs, GPUs, lots of memory options, the Pro chip, the Max chip. That's a lot to digest. So let's try to make some sense of all this so you're better informed to decide which new M1 MacBook Pro is the right one for you. Now, one of the interesting features about the new M1 Pro and Max chips is that Apple has used what's called chip binding to make the chips less expensive. And here's what I mean here. So let's say Apple has a 10-core M1 chip, but 2 of the cores have imperfections. So rather than throwing away the chip, what Apple does is it disables the 2 flawed cores, which effectively makes that 10-core chip into an 8-core chip. Now, the same thing can be done with the GPU cores. Now, this is why there is a M1 Pro 8-core CPU option and a 14-core GPU option, which saves you $500 over the 10-core and 16-core option. Now, this is just a simplistic explanation of what chip binding is, but at the end of the day, the most important thing to know is that this could save you money when you're configuring your ideal MacBook. Now, if you go onto the Apple page and you play around with the little sliders and deck out a computer to a fully spec'd out M1 Max MacBook Pro, you're going to find this is going to set you back about $6,100. That's for a 16-inch model with 64 gigs of RAM, 8TB SSD drive, 10-core CPU, and a 32-core GPU. Now, let's be real here. Some of you watching this video might very well need that sort of firepower, but most of you simply will not. Now, the original M1 chip is still a very good option for everyday usage, and to be honest, it has got plenty of horsepower, firepower for what most people need, even if you do some photo and video editing work. Think of it like this. We talk all the time in photography about how you should not buy, let me say that, should not buy the most expensive camera that you can afford. You'll be camera poor and you won't have the money to invest in other gear that you need, like better lenses. The same holds true here. If you buy a $6,100 laptop, think of all the other stuff that you won't be able to buy that you might need for your photography or videography hobby or business. Heck, I'd go out and say, or argue rather, that the M1 MacBook Air is still a solid choice for most people watching this video. Of course, what you buy is up to you, and not to make a Captain Obvious remark here, but my advice is to really think about the features that you need and forgo the ones that you don't. Now, I said a moment ago that many of you really likely will be totally fine with a MacBook Air with the original M1 chip. So what about the older M1 MacBook Pros, the 13-inch that was released last year, I think it was? Honestly, I don't see the point in buying an older M1 MacBook Pro at this point. Now, let me expound here. There just aren't the same, these really aren't at the same level as what the new models are. The new models have all sorts of features that make the added output really worth the money. For example, you get old ports back, like an HDMI port, an SD card slot, a headphone jack to go along with 3 Thunderbolt ports and MagSafe charger. Now, additionally, the SSD drives on the new MacBooks are way faster than those of the older M1 MacBook Pros. In fact, the 7.4 gigs per second transfer speed is twice as fast as what the SSD drive on the older M1 MacBook Pro can achieve. Now, the new M1 MacBook Pros also have a new keyboard with No touch bar, a better cooling system, faster RAM, better screens and smaller bezel, and a ProMotion 120Hz refresh rate, and a new 1080p webcam with an improved sensor and lens, and better speakers. So the moral of the story is this: if you're on the fence between a 13-inch MacBook, or I'm sorry, the M1 MacBook Pro, and a 14-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro, man, I'm gonna have to say the 14-inch has a lot more bang for the buck. In fact, if we upgrade a 13-inch M1 MacBook Pro to have the same 16 gigs of RAM and 512 gigs of SSD drive, or the storage rather, as the base 14-inch M1 Pro, friend, the price difference is only $300. And that list I just rattled off here a moment ago of all the upgrades is certainly worth $300 in my book. Now let's assume that you need an everyday computer to handle typical tasks: word processing, internet, basic photo, video editing, and the like. The base 14-inch M1 Pro model will probably suit your needs just fine. The 8-core CPU and 14-core GPU configuration is likely going to be all that you're going to need. But if you're like me and you need a computer that can handle heavy lifting for photo and video editing, upgrading the CPU and GPU is a very good idea. On the 14-inch model, you can add the unbind 10-core CPU and 16-core GPU for $300, the 10-core CPU and 24 GPU for $500, or the 10-core CPU and 32 GPU for $700. But at those prices, you're already close to the price of the base 16-inch model with the 10-core CPU and 10-core GPU. For example, the 14-inch model with the $300 upgrade to the 10-core CPU and the 16-core GPU is $2,299. Now, the 16-inch model with the 10-core CPU and the 16-core GPU is $2,499. So for $200 more, why not spring on the bigger, better screen and the other goodies that come with the 16-inch model, like the more powerful charger, the larger trackpad, and the better battery life? That's my 2 cents. Anyways, let's get back to the base 14-inch model. Now, if you want to stick with the smaller screen and you need a little bit more power, the $200 upgrade to the 10-core CPU and the 14-core GPU is really a great option, especially if you do some photo and video editing. Now remember, the base model comes with 16 gigs of unified memory, which is, for most people, more than plenty of horsepower. Now, this memory is much faster than what Apple has offered before, so you get much better, more efficient performance and improved ability to multitask. I just don't think the $400 upgrade to the 32 gigs of memory will be worth it for most people. However, if you do a lot of photo and video editing, that $400 will definitely be worth it. Now, let's circle around to the SSD front. Spending $200 to upgrade from the 512 gig to the 1 terabyte is an absolute great deal, but that's about as far as I'd recommend for most of you. Beyond that 1 terabyte, you start getting into some real pricey options that simply aren't required for what most people need out of a MacBook Pro. Besides, if you find that the 1 terabyte upgrade isn't enough down the road, you can always upgrade or invest, if I can grab them here, into some good external hard drives to get more storage space. Now let's talk about GPUs. Again, for most people, upgrading to a 24 or 32 core GPU really isn't necessary. But if you do a lot of professional video work, the 24 core max option is perhaps the best option because you get 50% better graphic performance for just $200 more than the 16 core GPU option. Now with the 24 core M1 Max, you also get better cooling system, support for 4 external displays, twice as many encode engines, and 2 ProRes encode and decode engines. Friend, that means that the M1 Max chip will probably export videos twice as fast as the M1 Pro chip. Now, if you're thinking about the 14-inch MacBook Pro, I would recommend spending the extra $20 to get the 96-watt adapter upgrades, since that will give you the ability to rapidly charge your laptop to 50% in just 30 minutes. That's a huge benefit for just $20. So, to recap, most of you would probably find that the base 14-inch M1 Pro MacBook Pro has everything that you need. But for those of you looking to buy a computer for more labor-intensive work, like photo and video editing, upgrading your CPU and GPU with more cores, adding additional memory, or jumping up to the M1 Max chip will hugely benefit your workflow. Now, of course, at the end of the day, it all comes down to dollars and cents, so your budget will likely dictate what you buy. Now, speaking of what to buy, like I mentioned earlier, I got my MacBook Pro already ordered. Actually, I ordered it the day that these things came out, and it should be here hopefully in about 3 weeks. I'll share with you what I ordered, and again, keep in mind, what I ordered here is fitting for my needs. See, my MacBook Pro here, this is a 2020 is what I'm pointing to my computer right here. This is my primary machine that I use for my editing, whether I'm in my studio or I'm out in the field. So I do a lot of video editing with Final Cut Pro, so I need a lot of horsepower. Well, I want a lot of horsepower. And so I went with the 16-inch MacBook Pro. I went with Space Gray, if it makes any difference. It's the M1 Max chip with the 10-core, 32-core GPU. I went with 64 gigs of unified memory and a 4 terabyte SSD drive. Now, on the SSD side, this one has a 2 terabyte. And with the amount of videos that I'm pushing out on a weekly basis, I'm constantly filling this thing up. And yeah, I have hard drives. I have 32 terabytes of RAID sitting in front of me here. I have another 10 terabyte drive right there. So that's what I ordered and kind of the logic behind my purchase. So there you guys have it, a quick buyer's guide for the Apple new M1 MacBook Pros. Now let's wrap up things by discussing our current giveaway. There are 3 fantastic prizes available for 3 lucky winners. We have the f-stop Talopa camera bag, a Rode Video Micro mic, and of course, the $100 Adorama gift card. As always, entering the giveaway is really simple. Step 1, like this video, subscribe to our channel. Step 2, leave a comment below. In fact, the more of our videos that you watch and leave it a comment on, the more chances that you have to win. So get watching some of our other videos and leave some comments. Step 3, register on Photography Talk and introduce yourself in the forum. Now, if you registered on the site during one of our last giveaways, you're still eligible to win. But as I keep saying over and over again, swing on by, say hello, post some photos, let us know what's going on. And friend, that is it. For complete details on the giveaway, including how to register on Photography Talk and how to say hello in the forum, check out the description below. Good luck. All right, guys, that is it. This was a fun video to put together. I don't know about you, but I've been waiting for Apple to come out with this machine for some time. Considering the amount of videos that I do on a weekly basis, I'm really excited about the possibilities of what this machine can do from an efficiency standpoint. Now, it's that time of the video where I'm going to ask you to do all that YouTube stuff. So if you're currently not subscribed to the channel, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button down below. If you found some value in this video, friend, hit that like button. It really does help with the whole YouTube algorithm. And hey, while you're at it, you might as well kick that bell so that you're notified each time that we come out with a new video. Friends, I'm going to be jumping onto my studio. You get out there, stay healthy, and find your best shot.